So welcome. We are the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Committee. And it is June 27th at 5:30. We'll bring the meeting to order. And I'd like to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I have some corrections or questions.
Okay.
A couple of them are minor.
I'm sorry, can you just give me a second here?
Sure.
Get to them, so. You know, you could always email these to me too.
Okay, well, a couple of them are just spelling of people's names.
Oh,
So that I can email you.
yeah, that's been corrected.
Kennelly and Averbush,
Yeah.
both of those, okay. The other, I wanted to, on the second page of the minutes, it says I asked for clarification of the purpose. What I really asked was, what are our actionable goals? I'd like that to be reflected in the minute.
Okay, actionable goals.
Correct.
Were you given an acceptable answer?
I think we left it as a question mark.
Right, we did leave it as there was a long discussion and then I don't think it was completely resolved. Hello.
I'm sorry, I was typing.
There was a long discussion
Question.
and about still to be
Still
resolved, I think.
to be defined.
Right. I remember there's a long discussion about the watershed management plan, et cetera.
Puppy,
So,
Yeah, I tried to get you a puppy.
Huh? My puppy died a little while ago.
I
That's
know.
enough.
I ran into Barbara and then shortly thereafter, there was a
We
puppy
can't handle
available.
another one.
Mr. Health, got a question for you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you know what that is?
all right, and the spelling ones you got already.
That's.
Okay, that's all I had.
It's on the northeast.
Well, I can't, honestly, I can't tell. I mean, it could be an oil slick. I'd have to go up and look at it close.
It was there I had a handyman at my house. It was there in the morning
Okay,
and it was gone by the end of the afternoon. But it's very.
Gone already?
Yeah, it was gone that day.
Then it wasn't a bloom because it's in the first place, once they rise to the surface and they get the scum.
Off it turns
It's sort of
out.
blue-green, sort of like this. This is more iridescent though, as far as.
Yeah.
They're dead and they don't go back down again.
I was just curious.
I don't know.
To 1 hour.
I don't know.
There was
No, we usually do this.
The only thing is that the
I was
house
just
being built
concerned.
over
Everyone
there.
has dinner.
Yeah, it could be,
Okay, we'd like to get it done within an hour, but
We're not,
we're not
we
restricted.
can leave the building.
You know,
I mean, we
and then
can
it
leave to
dissipates.
stay as long as we want to.
Okay,
You never know what people,
I just
maybe
wanted to
they
make
emptied their aquarium with something in it.
Okay,
God forbid.
okay, that's,
So I
On
think-
those corrections,
if I can just say, I think that's great. I think we should bring that up.
What?
Some actionable goals and
okay, but back to minutes.
back to the
Let's finish
minutes.
the minutes.
Yeah.
Upon the corrections of the minutes,
Yes,
can we approve them?
I moved to Yes. accept the minutes as corrected. I'll second it.
Okay, we have to do, because Michael is on the Zoom. We all,
Michael, that was a good depiction of what you said. Michael, yes, that wants to say something.
no,
He was
you
voting.
need to vote on the minutes.
Muted, Michael.
You're muted.
I just want to say, Don, I was very impressed with the minutes. I thought it was very well done, actually.
Okay, I was concerned.
Does that mean you approve?
Yes, I did. I raised my hand.
Okay, all right.
Sally,
Sally, aye.
Hi, Don.
hi, Jamie.
Hey, Gary.
Hi, Lori.
Skip. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Don, for doing that.
No,
So I'd like to
pleasure.
welcome Dr. Kenny to our meeting. For those of you who don't know, he used to be on Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Commission many years ago and worked hard. He's on the Board of Health and he's on the Tri-Town Board of Health. So, Charlie, take it away.
Thanks, Jamie. Anyway, thank you all for giving me the opportunity to talk about this a little bit. As you know, the Board of Health is responsible for issuing advisories on the bowl if there is a cyanobacteria bloom. And that's part of our mandated authority from the DPH in the state. If we do that, the state has very strict guidelines for how we do that. What we have to do, first of all, is we look to see if there's a visible scum that looks like it's something like what you're showing me there. And we have the ability to test it now. We can actually take a sample, take it back to Tri-Town and see, is it regular blue-green algae or is it cyanobacteria? Now, if it's cyanobacteria, if it tests positive for cyanobacteria, then we have to issue an advisory. The advisory stays in place as long as there's a visible scum. And we generally are not mandated by the state to test it then. Okay. The reason for that is, and this is always confusing to people, the cyanobacteria, especially the oscillatoria, which is the kind that we are prone to have, don't release the toxin very much until they die. And so when we have a visible scum, there may be some toxins as the cells are dying, but we wait until they're all dead. The scum dissipates. It tends to dissipate pretty fast when it does it. And then we start to test. And we do a test for toxins and cell count and look at the standards that the state has given us for there are different kinds of toxins. In this case, it might be antitoxin or microcystin that oscillatoria might make. There are different kinds. But we look for, and they have different levels that we have to continue to issue the advisory. We do that on a weekly basis, starting after the visible scum disappears. And once the toxin levels go down to an acceptable level, then we stop having the advisory. Now, the state issues these guidelines with respect to seeing the visible scum, or if we test it in the first place and we find that they're high cell count, usually it's 70,000 per cc cells, or a high toxin level in the first place, if we test it, which is not mandatory, but we can do that if we want. We usually would do that. We start to do the advisory at that time. And then the state tells us when to do this test and when we can stop having the advisory. But the state has absolutely no regulations for where in the lake to issue the advisory other than for the whole lake. So, and this is the issue that I'm approaching, okay, that I'd like to try to deal with. The fact is there isn't any advisory guideline from the state to, let's say, issue a partial advisory. Now, I've done some homework on this already, and I believe that it's logical and safe, potentially, and very reasonable for the Board of Health to formulate a protocol to issue a partial advisory. And there are many activities on the lake. And we don't necessarily, would not necessarily, if I can get this in place, we wouldn't have to shut down all those activities. We would only have to shut down the activities that would go in the vicinity of the bloom.
Question. So the state is not aware of this, what's the state's involvement in this?
Okay, so
Of a partial advisory.
Okay, the state does not have any guidelines for issuing a partial advisory, but I met with the DPH and Logan Bailey, who's in charge of this for the state from the DPH. I'm sorry, I'm getting some sort of a thing here. I just have to turn off my ringer there. When I have my hearing aids in, I forget to turn on my ringer. All right. So, excuse me. So I met with Logan Bailey and a couple other people from the DPH in the state, and they're very interested in the idea. They think it makes a lot of sense. And what they would be willing to do, Logan in particular is interested, he would be willing, if I put together a tentative protocol, or because I'd like to involve other people, he would be very willing to take a look at it and pass and weigh in on how the state feels about it and what the state's attitude would be about it. And he's optimistic. In fact, I spoke to Ben Burpee too from GZA, and he's Bob Cortman's associate, and he supervises, I believe, still the testing in the lake, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. And He thinks it's a very good idea. In fact, he thinks if we put together a protocol, we could pass it on to the state of Connecticut because they don't have anything like this either. Now, I've talked to people from Wisconsin, the Department of Health in Wisconsin, also the University of Wisconsin. They're very good with cyanobacteria. Also Cornell and SUNY in New York. And these places do already have partial lake advisories where they just separate off where the bloom is, but they don't have any guidelines for that.
But the state has the final say.
The DPH.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the DPH would be the one. But the point is I've been encouraged by the DPH to go forward with this. So I think that if we get a reasonably based one, that I think we could anticipate the DPH would go along with it. You know, ultimately, the Board of Health issues the advisory. It's the decision of the Board of Health. And I have brought this before our Board of Health, and the Board of Health is willing to go forward with the idea. And especially if the DPH weighs in on it positively, then I don't think we'll have any hurdle. Okay, but as I was saying, the several states, in fact, I think quite a few states have already in place partial advisories, but they don't have any guidelines for how to do it other than to say, you know, that they separate where the bloom is. Now, there are several problems with that. First of all, a lot of these lakes are very big. You know, so if Lake Erie has a cyanobacteria bloom, let's say over in this place, they don't close down the lake over in that place. Okay, and Cayuga Lake, even in New York State, they usually have the blooms down by the inlet down at the southern part of the lake, and they don't close off the rest of the lake further north just because they have it. And the reason for that, the supposition, and this is the logical basis for going forward with this, is that the concern really is the concentration of toxin in the water. And at a distance from the bloom, we would reasonably expect the toxin levels to decrease, the concentration. In fact, you would expect it to decrease as a cube of the distance because it's a volume. It's related to the volume. And so we could reasonably, the strategy that I would like to put into place, first of all, this is to accept the fact that it's going to be possible to do this. Look at the idea of possibly containing the bloom, because another issue that we have to deal with these things is they blow around. You know, you can have the wind blowing, the bloom can come up in the middle of the lake and it can blow down to the southern part of the lake. And as I said, the cells don't release the toxins while they're alive, but they do as they die. And if they're dying in one place and the wind blows them somewhere else, does it blow the toxins with them? That's an issue, right? The second idea is, let's say we had a bloom, and let's say the bloom was heading right for the town beach, and it wasn't a very big one, but it was heading right for the town beach. Now, could we get one of those air boats and blow the bloom to the side over by, you know, behind the island maybe, and then contain it with a flotation device? You know, there are flotation devices. Ben Burpee showed me a picture of one. He did a little research on this, and he says that I forget who it is, who manages the drinking water. It's not the DPH, I don't think.
DPU.
Maybe the water.
I thought it was
department.
DPU,
Okay, so
Department of Public Utilities.
he got a photo of a reservoir that was being protected. Inflow part of for the drinking water was being protected by a set of flotation devices, long air sausages, you know, that you can blow air into and let them float on the water. And it was really containing bloom. And apparently it made the drinking water safe. And from what I could tell, just looking at the picture, this barrier wasn't more than 20 feet. So I think that we've got a feasible situation here, especially if we thought about containing it with some of these flotation devices, and then at a second outer perimeter, putting a rope with some buoys And we would test the water just to, I wouldn't think as a protocol always in the future, but just to get going, it would be useful to test the water in between the perimeter and the containment area to make sure it was safe and expand out. I don't know about the details of this yet, but this would be where one of the things that I would hope, the commission would be able to start to help me with. We need assistance deploying these things. And the testing, of course, would go through GCA. The Board of Health has about $1,000 budget, and we can use some of that for the testing. But I would ask GCA to do this and to help us out with it in the early phases of figuring out what the protocol should be. And then we might not have to do the testing all the time after that. We just do it according to the way we would ordinarily do it if we were going to do a whole lake advisory. But to start with, we might want to get more strict guidelines. And I also am going to look at the idea of trying to get a grant to look at this. I'll speak to Logan about that too. Just because it might bring value to the state to go forward with this. And apparently they were interested in it. So anyway, this is where I am with it. And does anybody have any questions? Does any, understand what I'm trying to get?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The bloom we had in August of 18 was the cyan, that was the cyan. I mean, that started and within a day it was in the whole lake.
Yeah, well, there are different degrees of the bloom. You could have a little bloom, you could have the whole lake. You can have, if you have a whole lake bloom, we're probably going to be stuck with a whole lake advisory. All right. But the other part of it that I was driving at is this blows very easily with the wind. And I know Solitude has some of these airboats. We don't have any airboats, do we? But, if you tack that onto one of the bigger boat and, just let it blow, I wonder if that would blow the stuff so that we could contain it. Then we could test the water for toxins and see how we're doing.
I think you're trying to beat Mother Nature at this.
Well, no, I'm just fighting back. That's all. I mean, I think I'm part of the product of Mother Nature myself, so I don't mind doing it.
I think,
It's worth into, but
But yeah.
Michael has something. Yeah.
Charlie, first of all, good to see you.
Hi, Michael.
How you doing? I'm sorry I'm not there, but I have to be someplace right after this. How big a bloom do you think it would be to contain it? Like when we had it the last time, it was almost a whole lake, if I remember right. I don't remember exactly. It was pretty large. What size do you see that would be the size that it's feasible to physically contain this bloom?
you saw that.
I don't know. What I would work from the other direction. What I would say is that if we had a small bloom somewhere, that might, we would be working to try to keep those things from being a nuisance to the whole lake.
Right. So what I'm trying to get. Oh.
If we had a bigger, let's say we had a whole lake bloom, as you said, as I was telling Gary, I don't think we would be able to contain that, a whole lake. But I don't, I just don't know. What I would say is one of the possibilities is to blow it around. But I'm not saying that we would do that. I'm just saying that's a possibility. It would be more likely to be feasible to do that if we had a smaller bloom that was heading in a direction we didn't like, and we could possibly redirect it. But I honestly don't know, but I would doubt that a whole lake bloom would be manageable this way.
No, but I'm just saying if you take parameter, these whatever you call them around the bloom, the flotation device to keep it from moving. I'm just wondering if covering it depends on the size. Instead of blowing it, would covering it, as long as we're talking.
But what you wanted, covering it, I think, is not necessary. It's the toxin migrating through the water that we're looking for. And these barriers have some sort of an apron that goes down to mitigate the toxin migration underneath the barrier as the cells die. The other idea of a barrier is to work in reverse. Let's say, for example, we had a rather extensive bloom. Could we put a barrier around the town beach and protect it so that it wasn't affected? This would be working in reverse. But again, nobody has really looked at this kind of an approach in the past. they have in drinking water apparently, and I'm going to be investigating that a bit. And apparently it's used in restaurants. And I would say that has to be a pretty well thought out kind of an idea for them to do it in that kind of context. So I'm optimistic that we'll be able to set up a barrier to do one or the other, either separate out a small bloom or separate important areas from a bigger bloom. That would be the first approach I would have.
Having sailed on the lake for 60 years, I can tell you that it's a very rare occasion that the wind is just going in one direction.
Yeah, there hasn't been a bloom, a reportable bloom since the 1970s.
Right. Yeah. But we were just out the other day and it comes this way and then it comes that way and then it comes around and you're going before the wind and all of a sudden you're heading into the wind.
Not reliable. I agree with you.
I would like to, it strikes me that this is, you're saying, what can we, this commission do? And I was thinking that this would be, would have to be a joint project with people like this is an emergency. Our emergency response people and our fire department and that kind of thing. I mean, I don't think Gary has the capacity to, you don't even have a boat. We do have a boat now? Oh, sorry, I didn't know. To lay out this kind of perimeter, unless you.
Yeah,
think you
it could be done.
The operations of this are very different than the rationale and the data that would support doing it, because the consequences are so severe
Yes.
that, before we aerosolize the water with the toxins in it with some boat with a big fan on it, we should know what has been done before, what is the pattern, how does it migrate? When it
absolutely.
dies,
Right.
does it sink and is the current going to be taking it? I mean, we have a lot of homework to do before we even get to the feasibility stage, in my opinion.
Correct.
No, it's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I threw out some of these examples of what possibilities are, I didn't mean to propose those.
No, you did a great,
Right.
a
What I-
lot of homework, but there has to be a lot
Right,
more.
right. But the encouraging things about this, forgetting the airfoil idea or the airboat idea, the encouraging idea is that apparently the DPU is already using this for drinking water, this idea to contain the bloom and the toxins from going out in the inlet. And Ben Burpee showed me that picture, and he thinks that that's probably one of the ways that we're going to get some good information about it. And as I said, there are quite a number of other lakes already that have had partial advisories without any particular protocol, except they use the idea of don't go where the stuff is, where the bloom is. And that's a relatively unscientific approach. It might be manageable for a big lake, and especially one that has a wind or currents that throw everything in the same direction all the time. But with the Stockbridge Bowl has its, is more, capricious. So, we have to deal with that. And, but I do think that this it has some potential, and I think it'd be worthwhile to look into it. And I just wanted, first of all, I wanted to come here to, mostly as a courtesy, because we're doing this, we're looking at this in the Board of Health, and I know that the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Commission has an important role in the lake, and I wouldn't want to step around that idea. So that's the first thing. But secondly, I'd be very happy to have any ideas that you have as you want to start to think in parallel about the management ideas, how we would do things. We had a partial lake advisory
About 3 years.
drill. We figured it was blue-green. It wasn't blue-green algae, it was just regular algae, but we roped it off. Right. And we kept people away from it. We looked at the timing of doing it and got it tested and everything, and that, which would have been the procedure that they would have used in New York or Wisconsin. And I suspect in Connecticut, from what Ben was telling me, so that or else they close the whole lake down in Connecticut. I think that may be what they do. Connecticut closed the whole lake down. But the idea is that we could deploy the rope perimeter in a reasonable period of time. That was easy to do. So that's the first idea. The containment package might be a little more difficult. it might take more time to do that. And we'd have to go through a few drills with that to figure out what it entailed, if it was worthwhile. So, there is a lot of homework, and if you are interested in participating and pursuing this, what I would ask you to do is to think about this a little bit. And then when you have your thoughts together, maybe we could meet again and discuss some, I'll be meanwhile doing my own homework and and maybe we could get somebody particularly from your commission who would be part of a little committee, a subcommittee that we could form to specifically investigate it. So we could have somebody from you guys, maybe somebody from, our sewer and water, I don't know, maybe from Concom. I don't, the idea is we want to have a number of people involved in it, and so that we make sure that we do what everybody else, so that everybody knows what's going on and it rhymes. So I spoke to the Josh Billings people about it. They were very, very pleased with the idea, of trying to work towards something like that. And so
I think that's very good.
So Charlie, I'm just curious, the reservoir where they were able to put up a barrier, was that a reservoir that had constant feed and flow?
that it did what?
It had constant feed and
I don't know. I talking with Ben Burpee, and after the conversation was done, Ben went out and did his own little investigation on it and sent me a picture of and I can forward it to you. It's pretty impressive, separating the bloom from the place where they draw on the water. And I understood from what he was telling me that it was a Massachusetts reservoir, but I'm going to pursue that, so that I can
just
get.
curious whether, the barrier was because it was coming in from someplace and they could
Yeah, I
keep it
don't
from
know.
going to the route.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The picture only showed a small portion, so I couldn't tell exactly what was going on.
And we have a question on the screen.
Charlie, it's Louis Corman. You're absolutely right about developing a protocol. I've looked around, as you have, at cyanobacteria and how it's handled by different entities. The Department of Public Health for the state of Massachusetts is very vague. You could almost declare a hazardous bloom just based on seeing scum on the lake without even testing it. So I think you're absolutely correct that the development of a specific protocol to sort of make the diagnosis of a hazardous bloom and then implementing methods to manage it is absolutely critical, because it varies tremendously from state to state and even within the state based on the health department. So I would encourage that to be supported, particularly to work with the Stewardship Commission, because somebody could walk down to the lake and see some green stuff, and what do they do? Who do they call? Who do they report to? So that all of that needs to be sorted out, and I think a very specific process, which would be helpful. And whatever expertise I have in microbiology, I'm happy to contribute.
Thanks, Louis. So, but just to be sure, the people should report it to the Board of Health or to the town, and then the town tells the Board of Health, and Tri-Town will ultimately issue the advisory.
And
Right.
what time period is that? How long does that take?
Well, it depends how long it takes for somebody to notify us. I mean,
Well, from the time of notification to getting your results?
well, last year I personally was called 3 times, and I went over and looked within an hour. And it usually was within 10 minutes. I just went over and looked. But if I'm not here, then it would be, somebody else looking. But and Jim Willis looks too. And because of this false alarm we had a while back, because, even if we go to look, as Louis Corman was saying, the protocol says to issue the advisory, that boards of health should issue the advisory based on the presence of a visible scum. Now, we don't have a lot of experience with cyanobacteria scums. Okay, now, when we had our bloom several years ago, I went out to a number of lakes in Massachusetts that had blooms so that I could look at them, and they look different. They don't all look the same. In oscillatoria, our stuff looks sort of brownish, You know, it's a brownish kind of scum most of the time. So we didn't like that idea. And then we figured we'd test it to be sure before we issued an advisory, because once you issue the advisory, then you have to go through with all of this procedure in order to take the advisory back. And it's, you know, I mean, I think it's important to be careful and to respect people's health and safety, but we don't want to go off and yell fire when it's not appropriate to do that. So we got together and the select board helped us with this too. We got a testing machine, because the lag time to test for cyanobacteria, with Ben Burpee doing it, it was going to be a couple of days, as I remember. Do you remember how long it was going to be? I think 2 or 3 days. He was going to get right on it. First of all, Mike Buffoni got the samples. Then he had to ship them down to Connecticut somewhere. I think he took them down there, right? And then it had to be sent up to where Ben was in Maine or someplace. And then, so it was quite a bit of lag. So we got our own testing device, and we have it, and we test it. Ben gave Jim and Willis and myself lessons on how to use it. And so I think we can handle that pretty quickly if we see a bloom, as long as we're advised that there is one.
Okay.
But, you know, first we go and look at it, and I've seen enough blooms and studied them enough so that I can tell, you know, if it's cyanobacteria. If I have any doubt at all, I would, we would test it, but if it's not cyanobacteria, I mean, if it doesn't look like, somebody asked me to go and look at something, and it was something that somebody threw out of their swimming pool. I think it was that, what's that white stuff that they use for filter? Diatomaceous earth. Somebody threw out some diatomaceous earth, and I think it had some chlorine in it or something. It looked sort of funny, so I looked at that, but I think it's pretty fast most of the
So
time.
you're saying within a couple hours or half a day, you would have
I think
the
that's
test results?
oh, yeah, absolutely. The testing to determine, is it cyanobacteria?
Right.
The testing to get the toxin levels is another idea, but we don't use that. We don't use that necessarily as a basis to issue an advisory. If we have a visible scum, then we use that to test for cyanobacteria. If it isn't cyanobacteria, we don't even have to bother to test it.
Well, I agree with Louis. I think that given that our lake is shallow and can be prone to this kind of a bloom, having a protocol in place, what should somebody do? What should any of us do if we see a bloom? And I think that should be well known. And then, for example, we have divers that go in and pulling out invasive species or counting or whatever, that, we should have a protocol in place so we know exactly what to do. And then, of course, there's a whole nother cascade of steps once the results come back, whether it's 2 hours or a half a day or whatever. So
Yeah, well, the Stockbridge Bowl has been remarkably healthy since the 70s. In the 70s, they were having quite a number of blooms. And I would say, just because I like to put this plug in, I know some people won't like me saying that they were using herbicides during that period of time. They stopped using the herbicides and the blooms stopped. And we had a bloom then a few years ago. And since then, we haven't had anything. But climate change is wreaking havoc everywhere, and we know that. And the ideas about climate change are heating the lake, and are what are called mixing events. The mixing events come when the wind and the rain and the inflow mix up the levels. Usually these cyanobacteria reside about 30 feet down, and they don't bother us. And in fact, this is an advantage of having oscillatoria as a cyanobacteria in our lake. It's keeping out another one named microcystin. Microcystis is a nasty one because it rises up in the middle of the summer. It resides lower, but it comes up in the middle of summer. Oscillatoria usually comes up in the winter. So it's a good one to have. It resides down very low. But the problem is and it resides at this place where the cold water and the hot water form a barrier, against mixing. And the bigger the difference in temperature, for these two layers of water, the greater resistance to mixing. So the germs stay down there, and they are germs. That's what they are. But if we get a lot of mixing and flowing, if the water heats up, if we get a lot of currents going around, we can see mixing. And that's the thing that I don't want to anticipate that, but I want to be prepared for it. I'm hoping that we're not going to have that. And I'll just say one other thing about herbicides, as long as I have everybody's attention here. The traditional teaching of the limnologists who argue that there is no association between herbicides and cyanobacteria blooms, argue that when you use herbicides, that you're using it in a eutrophic lake, and if there's an association between the two, it's because the cyanobacteria emerge in eutrophic lakes as well. And there was, it was touted that there has never been a study that shows a relationship between herbicide application and subsequent cyanobacteria bloom. And that's true. And I went to look to see the studies that showed that there wasn't an association. But the fact is there has never been a study done that shows that there isn't an association. None published, never. I had the information specialist up at Williams College Science Library do a search for me. I had the librarian at UMass do a search for me, and I had somebody at Johns Hopkins at Bloomberg do a search for me. And there has not been a study that shows that you could put herbicide in and not have and not predispose to cyanobacteria. Amazingly, even though this thing is such a valuable, such an expensive thing to have, nobody's ever looked at it. I did a study. I got information for the last 5 years from the DPH, from the Department of Lakes, and also from the Conservation Commission department. And I've studied the lakes that had herbicides put in and the subsequent cyanobacteria blooms, and the lakes that didn't have herbicides in and the subsequent cyanobacteria blooms. And there's a 4.5 times greater incidence of cyanobacteria blooms after the application of herbicide. Now, the way that this works, I think, is that, and this, I spoke to Ken Wagner about it, and he said, the herbicides work in the littoral zone, and that's around the beaches, and the blooms occur in the middle of the lake. But if you ever go by the weeds around the edge of the lake, you'll see that the weeds blow with the wind. Not the wind, but with the water. And if you kill them, the water has less resistance to flow. I think that the water will have that it's a rheological effect, potentially, that the mixing event that we're talking about is much more likely to happen. And secondly, the weeds shade the dark material at the bottom. And if you remove the weeds, the sun is going to go down, and I think it's going to heat the bottom. So you're going to have this water sloshing around in the littoral area that's hot and mixing, going into the middle of the lake. And I think it's a physical connection, not a biochemical one. That, see, the limnologists study biochemistry up the wazoo. Anyway, I'm sorry I digressed there, but I just thought that was an important thing to do, because I do think that we need to understand that these things, that we could actually provoke a cyanobacteria bloom.
So all the other lakes in Berkshire County that use the herbicides.
And a lot of them have cyanobacteria blooms. And, and knock on wood, we've only had one since we stopped using herbicide. And if you look back, who was the fellow that did that, the original limnology of the Stockbridge Bowl? What was his name? He was from UMass.
Cortman? Not Cortman.
No. This is a guy in 1970. In 1973, he wrote the Limnology of the Stockbridge Bowl.
Yeah.
It was the first one. It was before those other big studies, that were done. Pardon me?
Fugro, that was one of them.
Yeah, before the Fugro study,
Before,
right?
okay.
It was, and he identified the idea that every time they did the herbicide application, you had a cyanobacteria bloom. And so
They're doing it for weeds. all the other lakes.
Well, I'm sorry.
But my understanding is the other lakes, like Ashmere, they're doing it for the weeds.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. All I can say is that
Yes.
Potentially.
that I would like to see, considering the expense that cyanobacteria blooms incur, considering the millions, and I'm being very underestimating here, the amount of money that Solitude, for example, gets for putting chemicals in the water, you would think that they would do a reasonable study to show that doing this doesn't cause cyanobacteria blooms, but they've never done that. That's what they should do. And it annoys me that they do this stuff and they don't actually, probabilities, you can do something and nothing happens. And I'm proposing a method that it seems pretty feasible to me, but nobody has looked at this. And I think it's actually, I'm going to take that back just because I know some of these people. Nobody has published having looked at it. It's a big business and you don't want to get bad news.
Right.
And you don't want to ruin your own business.
That's right.
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you all for listening to me about this. What I would say is that if this makes sense to you, what I would ask you to do is to think about it some more. And if you have somebody especially who would be interested in this that you think might be a member of a subcommittee that we would put together to try to work on this a little bit, then I'd be very happy to put something like that together. And the Board of Health would head it.
I'll work with you on that.
Well, thank you.
I'll be on it.
The end result though is,
yeah.
I think we
And I
need,
maybe,
we need
I would think
a
Louis would.
protocol that we
Louis
can
also should be on
use
it.
if tomorrow we get
I was thinking,
potential
Well,
bloom.
if you have a number of people interested on the commission, then I was hoping, I didn't want to take up your time, okay? But what I would suggest to you, if you have a number of people interested, you can make a decision among yourselves. If you want to have a limited number of people participating in a subcommittee, that would be fine. Or if you'd like me to just come back to you and meet with all of you, I can do that also. I don't mean to exclude anybody either.
I think we all are very supportive of this idea. We think there's great enthusiasm here. A bunch of people are volunteering. We'll have to decide who is part of this subcommittee. I think you can count on us participating.
Okay, good. So
And just what do we do? Just let you know or?
Yeah, it's going to take me a few more weeks to get, some people are doing some things for me and they'll get back to me. And I want to talk to the DPU, and once I get my homework, I have a lot of homework to do myself in order to understand some of these things. Then I can come back and make a more specific proposal and actually maybe have some ideas about where I might specifically need your help. And you might also have some ideas about things you think we should be specifically careful about, which I think is always very, very helpful to know. And, maybe the case of this idea isn't a good one and we can't do it. So
If we had a small brochure or something like this to hand out, we could have that at the boat ramp. We have 5,000 people coming in every year. And then we can get a lot of this stuff out there and they can catch these things early.
Well, catching them early is, I want you to understand two ideas. I'm very happy with that idea on one level, but the Tri-Town Health Department would have to then go out and actually do that. And I would like to have trained observers looking, okay? Before we get, that would be part of what I would ultimately want to do is rather than having everybody calling us up all the time and telling us to go, it ends up being like, the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't want to become lackadaisical about it. So I think we've had a pretty good, people are pretty sharp around the bowl. The people that live around the bowl and already go on the bowl and are usually on the bowl have good eyes and they seem to know what's going on. And I don't see right now that our reporting system is an element of deficiency.
Okay.
I would like to keep it where it is right now, but I thank you for the idea. I hope you don't mind if I don't agree.
would the zebra mussel people be willing to have some extra training?
That's a good idea because it's there every day.
They're there every day.
We can post some stuff down there if you want.
Well, let's see what we're going to post.
Yeah.
We make sure we figure it out so we do it. At any rate, thank you for your time.
Thank
I
you.
have a question.
All right.
Charlie?
Charlie,
Oh,
thanks.
Michael, did you have a
Michael
question?
Nathan has something to say.
I just have a question for you. When the bloom begins, how do you know how large it's going to be or when it really ends being a bloom? Why I'm saying that is, if you try to contain it, how do you know it's not going to be still growing on the outside of the containment that you want? So, I mean, at what point do you know that it's not, do you wait until it's not growing anymore? Or when is this in your vision of it? Do you know what am I explaining?
I don't have an answer to that question. That's one of the elements that I have to actually learn about.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, so if you contain it, it still might not, it might still be growing past. the
Yeah, well, this is
containment.
part of the problem with the effectiveness of the containment.
Right,
Is the containment actually effective?
right.
And,
Oh, I'm trying to get to, go ahead. I'm sorry, Charlie.
Yeah, I just don't know.
Mhm.
I hope I didn't mislead you by proposing this now because I don't know all these things yet, but I just thought I should let everybody know what I was working on because the Board of Health is aware of it. And I'll be looking at some of those very answers. I think that the idea of but what I'll just tell you, just from what I already understand about cyanobacteria, I don't think that the bloom is growing on the surface. What I think happens is the cyanobacteria decide, and I don't want to get into how they decide this, to rise up. They control their buoyancy as a result of change in the limnology of the hot and cold water barrier boundary that they don't like, and so they rise up because they can produce gas, and so the bloom is coming up from below. And from what I understand, it tends to happen pretty quickly within about 9 hours, but I don't know yet, and I wouldn't want to figure that out yet.
Because I remember when that bloom, I remember going swimming a couple of days before that bloom came and in the water going, this is strange. You're strange. This water is very strange. It was like sort of looking into particles were just coming up.
Yeah, those are the cells.
Whatever, but it was a few days or a while before all of a sudden there was a bloom. It was almost like next time I see this in the water, I would almost say like, this is the same of what I saw before the bloom. So that's why I asked, how do we know when it actually?
I think in some ways it's cyanobacteria specific.
Mm-hmm.
And it's lake specific.
Right.
And it's provocative environment specific. If we had a big storm and a big mixing event, it might happen faster than if it's an end of the summer, just it's getting hot.
The other thing I want to say is I agree with you. People around the lake are very vigilant. I mean, the minute when we had the last one, within no time, that was identified. That is a concern I don't have. The concern, of course, is how do we keep it from happening? But spotting it, everybody on the lake right away. And we even had somebody come out with a, what is the, to take photos.
It was the drone. It was the drone. We had the drone.
Right. We had somebody with a drone come out just to give us an idea of the size of it. And so, we've been very, very lucky that we've only had that one. You're right, Charlie. Only,
That was pretty dramatic.
right?
That was very dramatic. I went down with my grandchildren and I looked in the water and I said, we're not swimming today.
Good idea. Okay, but it turned out not to be. I don't know which
No,
one.
it was. That was
That was the
it.
real one.
That was the real one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
We're like,
nasty. It
oh my
smells
God, that was bad.
disgusting.
Charlie,
Okay, have a good.
email is
Pardon me?
DKKennyMD@gmail.
Jamie has my email and you should have it too. Jamie,
I
Yeah, I
have
can-
CKennyMD
MD at.
at Gmail. Okay, good. Thanks. All right, have a good evening, everybody.
Thanks, Charlie. I still have your book. I have to get back to you.
Oh, did you like it?
Yeah.
She's a
Really.
very good drawer, isn't she?
Yes,
She's got some
yes,
very good ideas.
yeah.
Yeah.
Charlie, could we use Zoom possibly to identify, go like this with the phone and have you look at it?
I think I'd have to go, I have to go there,
Okay,
I think most of the time.
no problem.
Okay.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Charlie.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so I have an observation that that I think the lake is clearer and less weedy than I have seen it in many years.
I agree,
It's really quite remarkable, I think.
because I went paddle boarding and you can, oh, so you can,
Yeah,
Step down the channels, getting.
Step down the channel.
yeah, but up at the club, it's amazing. There's not even any
Well,
milfoil.
Shallow.
a lot of rain and not a lot of sun.
Yeah,
We've been impressed with how many times the harvesters come down.
okay.
Yeah, really nice to see them more this year than before. So, yeah, that's great.
And I also want to thank Tom Finan, though he's not here, for putting up the signs and doing some,
I put up the signs.
and Sally too.
Yeah.
And we want to thank Don for doing his good minutes.
Oh, you're
And,
welcome. Thank you.
And July 6th, at 11:30, Lori Rock is doing an invasive study information. It's also in that bulletin Don has,
On the Stockbridge Bowl Association.
but it's also on the bulletin board in Town Hall. So anybody's welcome to come. So
Jamie, I'm sorry, it's Lori. It's starting at 10 to 11:30.
10, okay, thank
I'm sorry, it
you.
starts 10 to 11:30.
Okay, thank you. Important.
And where's it gonna be?
Well,
Lunch.
Yeah. Excellent. I got a couple of
Let's see, any other things I can think of?
Madam Chairperson.
Did you have an announcement?
Huh?
Do you have an announcement?
No, I just had a couple of other things under updates and announcements here. I
Sure,
guess,
go ahead.
Oh, go for it, okay. We all agreed that we wanted to do this dogs versus zebra mussel thing. Sally said she's not, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that you couldn't take another project on.
I would be willing to be
Part.
part of the launch, but I'm not gonna be out there every day all summer long.
Well, I think that would be, I don't know what it would take. So maybe that should be the first thing. I'm willing to look into whatever it takes.
I mean, you'd have to have a training session. You'd have to identify, according
Well,
to
let me,
Jen, you'd need to have about 6 dogs and you need to have handlers who were willing to continue with the training throughout the seasons, because you can't just decide, okay, I'm gonna,
understand.
do this for.
Charlie, how
So
about-
let me,
how about Moose?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I'm sorry.
Kevin Foran, Moose. Do you know
His
him?
nickname is
Yeah, what
Moose.
about,
He'd be perfect for this.
Yeah,
oh, would
his,
he really? Oh, that's a good idea.
his dogs.
I'm confused. I thought the motion was to investigate this, not to actually do it.
You got it.
Since we're an advisory to the select board after the investigation and all the data comes,
Right.
this committee would decide, are we proposing it to the select board or
so-
not? I thought that,
Right.
am I
You're
confused?
right. No.
So what we're
Rachel's
saying,
on the
what
right
we're
track.
saying now is we will put together some sort of proposal or position. And, I'm willing to draft something. If somebody else wants to help out, that's great.
With a budget, so the select
Well,
board can
we're-
decide.
We're not
Yeah,
there
you-
yet.
I'm saying that would be part of the package.
Obviously, it's
Yeah.
not gonna be for free, and I just got a recent communication from this other organization. Anyway. So we could do that maybe, in the next week or two.
Mhm.
Okay.
Are you in town? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going away again until
Okay,
July 13th. I think.
okay, awesome.
Any other,
Okay.
an update?
We're having some really bad erosion down at the boat ramp, and I think we've got to get something going down there. I don't know what. We've talked to, public access, and they don't have the money. But if the selectmen were to take a look at it, I think you'd be, have you been up there recently?
Yeah.
Take a look over near where the benches are.
Oh, it is bad.
Yeah, it's, and it's
I
got-
thought you meant down by the water.
no, I'm talking about the whole bank there.
Yeah, the bank.
And we're gonna start losing, we lost one tree last year. We're gonna lose more because there's nothing left.
Well, there's nothing holding the bank.
No,
Right. 'cause
we
with
need to
these
have
big
riprap there or
storms.
something.
But there's no vegetation, there's
Right.
no trees,
It's
there's
all-
no anything. It should be planted, Gary.
So-
And people
so-
aren't gonna like it, but it should be planted.
No.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know
so,
if the
Because we get
planning's gonna
these-
hold it back right now. I mean, we need something right there immediately.
What about those,
Those like a.
swaddles, those,
Yeah.
the straw?
well, have you talked to the highway department about that?
No, they will.
I would certainly say you should talk to the highway department, and maybe send it with a copy to the select board.
Okay.
But Stockbridge would have to pay for it, correct?
What the state?
Well, let's let them work it
Yeah,
out.
but
Yeah, let them work it out. I mean, that's
Well,
not,
there's the issue.
What?
The state owns and controls the boat ramp, and yet they are willing to do virtually nothing.
yeah.
You have to pay for it.
they have a lot of
Pretty
promises,
much.
but no money.
So, okay, so that's, you'll do
Any other updates
that.
or Sally, anything?
I have more.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I always have one. I ran into our town administrator, Mr. Canales, and I asked him, we're supposed to get this list of steps still needed to
And, I
complete
gave
the
you
dredging
those.
project.
I gave it to everyone.
Yeah, you sent it this afternoon.
Mhm.
Oh, when'd you send that?
This
All those
afternoon.
reports.
Oh, okay, just this afternoon, okay. so
Yes.
we-
Sent it out this afternoon?
Yes.
Okay, so we have that.
It was around 2:30 or so.
Yeah,
Okay, that's great, so he got
We
on
have
that.
that.
yeah, he gave it to me and I
And-
gave it to you guys.
I asked him, so we got that. I asked him who's representing the town with regard to GZA and NHESP. I mean, do we have some individual committee, commission, point man or woman or
What's his name?
Wellington?
Yeah, Wellenkamp, Greg
He
Wellenkamp.
is.
All right, well, he was appointed, I know because I appointed him, project manager.
Right.
Well, we don't even have a project yet, so I mean.
And he's not
I'm
a
wondering
town
who's
resident.
looking into getting the permits and all that sort of good stuff. And
He works with Mike Nathan, doesn't he?
who?
Greg?
No, I thought
Works
he,
with who? Nathan?
Hmm.
Okay.
well,
Talk to
how
Mike.
so?
They seem to be working together in a lot,
On what?
On that?
on whatever
This
they're doing.
doesn't
Yeah,
seem very
that's needed.
clear.
Yeah, I think this commission, we should be involved in something like that. I would like to know, maybe our chairperson
Mhm.
would like to be the town representative because, what's his name? Mr. Nathan represents,
SBA.
SBA.
All right.
And, I think that's an important thing. Other than that, I will shut up.
Any
So,
other
it's about time,
updates?
Dawn. Come on, Sally.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, our next meeting is July 18th because we have the 4th of July holiday on Thursday.
I may not
By
be here,
18th.
but I can maybe zoom
And
in.
then, okay,
Yeah.
so 5:30 here. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion. I'll
Second?
make it.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.